She said it was a women-only retreat. The red silk tie told me the truth. I make pastries for people who lie to themselves in the morning. That's not an insult, it's an act of mercy. At 6 a.m., nobody really needs a twice-buttered croissant that fractures like stained glass under your fingers. But they take a bite and say, "Just this once," and I watch their eyes close like they've forgiven themselves for being human. I supply small, edible pardons. It keeps me honest. My wife, Lena, teaches yoga a few blocks away. Where my mornings are butter and heat, hers are incense and breath. 6 years into our marriage, we had a comfortable choreography. I'd rise at 2, start the doze. She'd wake at 6, pad into the kitchen in one of my shirts, kiss the notch of my jaw, and steal a warm pain au chocolat for research. We were good at orbiting each other, close, warm, gravity intact. So when she said she was going to a women-only wellness retreat upstate, I didn't question it. Lena has always liked rooms full of intentional language, words like alignment and release, the kind of words bakers pretend not to need. She packed a weekend's worth of soft things and left me a list of reminders for the houseplants that could run a small embassy. She kissed me like a promise and left on a Thursday, which in our home tastes like permission. I told myself I'd use the time to test a new brioche dough, maybe finally chase the perfect creme diplomate. Instead, on Thursday night, I found a red silk tie under our bed. It was the sort of red that makes decision makers say yes. The silk had a little tooth to it when I slid it between my fingers, expensive enough to misbehave gracefully. It smelled faintly of peppercorn and cedar, and there was a small embossed logo stitched on the back, 3 minimalist lines over the name Frame House. Not a brand I recognized, but the font had the smugness of members only. I sat on the floor with my palms braced against my thighs and tried to be the type of man who doesn't go looking for storms. I wanted to place the tie in a neutral category. Misplaced, borrowed, from that donation bag we forgot to drop off. I wanted to treat it like a raisin in the wrong bowl, unwelcome but explainable. But the truth is, I held that tie and felt a tiny gear inside me skip a tooth. Because here, another truth, I had heard of Frame House. Everyone on our block had. It was a discreet co-working loft above the photography studio on Waverly, a place where glossy people floated in and out holding lattes and plans. Word on the street was they rented it for branded shoots and curated experiences, which is a phrase that makes my left eye twitch. I should have left the tie where I found it and asked my wife about it when she came home. That would have been the adult thing. Instead, I tucked it into my back pocket, locked the apartment, and walked to Waverly with the stubborn gait of a man bracing for answers he's not ready to digest. The Frame House lobby was all matte black and kind smiles, the kind of space that looks good in photos because it believes it's being watched. I told the receptionist I was delivering pastries for a shoot upstairs. Not a lie, exactly. I'd grabbed a pastry box on my way out, 6 almond croissants arranged like favors at a ceremony I hadn't RSVP'd to. She waved me through, and I climbed a staircase dressed in velvet and promises. The loft opened onto a long room with south-facing windows and a view that made even the pigeons look curated. There were racks of clothing, lights like small moons, and a backdrop the color of expensive teeth. I took 2 steps inside and saw her. Lena. She was in a white slip dress I'd never seen, the kind that made her look like a summer you apologized to for ending. She was laughing, chin tipped up, the soft line of her throat an invitation for sunlight. Standing in front of her, holding a camera like a priest holds a liturgy, was a man in his early 40s with ocean-weathered eyes and a jaw that looked sponsored. He wore a charcoal shirt rolled to the elbow and a smile that claimed he had never needed to convince anyone of anything. A red silk tie hung from his wrist like an omen. Orion, someone called, and he turned his head just enough for me to catch it. His name, I mean. Orion, of course it was. I hovered by a cluster of fake ferns, pastry box in my hands, that tie burning the length of my spine. I watched as Orion lifted the camera and said, "Close your eyes." He looped the tie around Lena's eyes like a magician who'd sworn off rabbits. Her mouth softened. She wasn't afraid. The tie looked like the kind of danger you request. "Hold still," he said. He stepped closer and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture I had thought belonged to me. His fingertips barely grazed her skin, but the air reacted. Even the ferns listened. I set the pastry box on a table with an unnecessary flourish and made the mistake of meeting Lena's face when she lifted the blindfold. Our eyes locked across the room, and in that moment, a dozen small facts stood up and demanded to be counted. She didn't startle. She didn't fumble or flush or turn guiltily to the wall. She tilted her head the way she does when I show her a new chocolate glaze and she's about to tell me to add more salt. Her mouth parted in a silent "oh." Then she looked away, composed her features into a public setting, and touched Orion's sleeve like the world had asked for his attention, not mine. That tiny skipped tooth inside me, another one went. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't drop the pastries or clear my throat with masculine significance. I walked to Orion, introduced myself as the husband, and offered him a croissant. He took it with a laugh that tried to make me an accomplice to his charm. Up close, he smelled like cedar and pepper and a little victory. He said nice things about my bakery with a talk show host's sincerity. I smiled right back because I know how to temper sugar and expression at the same time. Lena crossed to me. "I can explain," she said low, like we were sharing notes in church. "Of course," I said, and somehow my voice didn't break. "Women only retreat, right?" A muscle in her cheek fluttered. "This is work," she said. "A collaboration. It was last minute. The retreat, I changed my mind." "Clearly," I said, and there it was. The faint click of a spring that can't be put back exactly where it was. I left without asking for details. Anyone in that room would be too good at performing. The receptionist told me to have a beautiful night. I told her I'd settle for a true one. Back at the bakery, I rolled out brioche I had no intention of baking and tried to knead a confession out of the dough. Midnight blurred into 2 a.m., the hour where silence makes you think you invented it. When the front bell tinkled, I didn't bother looking up. I knew the footsteps. Lena stood in the doorway in a black coat that felt like a decision. She watched me flour the bench and fold the dough over itself with the slow tenderness of a man attempting to speak without his mouth. Then she walked around the counter and slipped her hands under mine, palm to palm, like we were about to pray. Flour bloomed up around us in a soft, holy cloud. "Say it," she whispered. I breathed in butter and my wife, and the ghost of cedar I didn't want to recognize. "Who is he to you?" Her head tipped forward, a few strands came loose and collected flour like a halo of small sins. "A photographer. He hired me to demonstrate partner stretching for a campaign. It started a month ago. He's charismatic." "That word is doing heavy lifting," I said, and immediately regretted the joke. She didn't laugh. We flirted. I liked feeling visible in a way that wasn't about schedules and keys and whether the plants have enough water. We went for coffee after shoots. He kissed me once outside Frame House and I kissed him back. I told myself it was research, something I needed to know about myself so I could choose us again with full knowledge. She managed a bruised smile. You can hear how noble I tried to make it. Heat rose in me, quick and unwise. I turned the dough with more force than necessary and watched it stubbornly refuse to become anything but what it was. "Are you sleeping with him?" No, she said, and I'm not asking you if that helps. She took a breath like she was about to dive. I didn't go to the retreat because I didn't want to run from what I was doing. I went to shoot because part of me wanted to be caught. She met my eyes. And there you were. We stood in the murmuring quiet of proofing racks and refrigeration hum. I could feel the shape of my anger, but it wasn't a straight line. It was a knot, a useful thing if you respect it, a trap if you don't. I reached for the tie in my pocket and placed it on the bench between us. Flour dusted it like snow on a red street. His, I asked. It's frame house, she said. Props for a concept about blind trust. Don't roll your eyes, I already did it for both of us. He made it his signature for the shoot. She hesitated. I brought it home once by accident. Then I forgot to put it back. Accident, forgotten. Words that try to help but end up making a bed for something to lie down in. I brushed flour from her wrist with my thumb. Her pulse fluttered against my skin like a bird that hadn't decided whether to stay. You and I said, voice low, used to be very good at wanting each other in rooms where other people were trying to watch. Somewhere along the way, we made our wanting appropriate. I lifted her hand and traced a circle on her palm with the pad of my finger. Her breath caught, not out of fear. I'm not asking for a performance. I'm asking if you still want me to be the man you come home hungry for. Her eyes glossed, then cleared. She didn't move away. Show me, she said, and I felt the ground tilt toward the first time again. I didn't make a movie of it. We didn't tear clothes or knock over trays. I stepped closer and pressed my body along hers like a secret I trusted her with. Flour dusted our coats. Somewhere a proofing timer blinked a mild suggestion. I kissed her, slow, considerate, the kind that asks permission at every turn and gets it because it means the question. I found the edge of her coat and slipped my fingers beneath just enough to remind us that warmth is an argument you can win with patience. When I broke away, she exhaled a sound that might have been a word or a vow. I decided to believe both. Block him, I said, not because I wanted to own her phone, but because I needed the ritual. She took it out, pressed a few buttons, and placed it face down on the steel. Done. Tomorrow, I said, invite him here. Tell him you're doing one final shoot. I'll make coffee. We'll talk to him in the light, not in a hallway where words slip. Her eyebrows walked toward each other. Are you sure? No, I admitted, but I'm certain. I brushed her hair back, letting my knuckles graze her neck. There's a difference. He came at 10 the next morning with his camera and his casual grin, and a tie looped like a trophy from his wrist. I had already opened for the morning rush. The bakery smelled like buttered sunlight. People queued, chatted, kissed. The bell chimed whenever someone left with a small, precarious box and a smile. Orion, I said, and handed him the house espresso. No tie today. I nodded at the one on his wrist. Keep it there. Something in his face registered that he was, at last, in someone else's frame. He slid a glance at Lena, who stood by the window in jeans and one of my sweaters. The sunlight turned the tiny flour dust in her hair into a crown. She gave him a small, professional nod. This is the conversation, not the shoot, she said. He tried charm. When that didn't land, he tried indignation, pretending rules had been broken he thought he'd invented. At last, he tried honesty, almost by accident. It was a kiss, he said. Two adults. Mutual. If you want to play jealous husband, at least admit the material's thin. You're right, I said. It's thin. What bothers me is that you like the thinness. You enjoy the almost, the not quite, the fiction you get to sell yourself about what kind of man you are. His smile fell apart politely. Lena stepped forward, hands steady. I let it get to this, that's on me, but this is where it stops. She looked at me, then him. I choose my marriage, not a curated experience. I watched a man lose a room and want to pretend he had never wanted it. He left with a nod that tried to be magnanimous and a tie that finally looked small. The door chimed after him like a soft applause. We didn't celebrate. We worked. We sold the pastries we had made. We washed dishes and miscounted change. Twice, Lena slipped her hand into the back pocket of my jeans and left it there for a heartbeat longer than necessary. It was a domestic gesture with indecent implications and felt exactly like us. That night at home, I found the red silk tie on the kitchen counter, coiled like a retired scandal. Lena looped it around my neck with deliberate care, then tugged me in by the knot and kissed me until the room changed temperature. We laughed against each other's mouths like conspirators. When she pulled back, she loosened the knot slowly, a centimeter at a time, as if unwrapping something we had almost given away. YouTube would want a disclaimer there, and I'll give it freely. We didn't offer the camera anything it wasn't allowed to see. We turned down the lights and rediscovered verbs we'd stopped using out loud. We took our time. We left ellipses where an audience would expect exclamation points. When the curtain faded to black, it wasn't censorship. It was privacy coming home. The tie lives now in a drawer with ribbons and chargers and a jar of forgotten screws. Sometimes I catch a flash of red when I'm looking for a battery, and it reminds me of the morning I realized forgiveness is a craft, not a miracle. Thursdays belong to us again. We call them open kitchen, even if the only guests are us. She sits on the counter and reads me lines from the book she swears she's writing. I brush sugar from her knees with the back of my hand. We kiss while the timer counts down and pretend we're not doing math in our heads. When the bell rings, we actually pull the tray out. Self-control has its rewards, and break a blistered loaf with our fingers. We feed each other, still warm butter melting scandalously across our hands, and we laugh like thieves who got away with the only thing worth stealing. People come in every morning and buy their little pardons. I wrap them with care. I try to be generous with everyone who looks like they're negotiating with themselves. There are so many ways to fall out of rhythm. But when Lena passes the front window and gives me that glance that says later, I feel the small gears inside me align. The second hand catches. The hour forgives the minute for not always waiting. And somewhere, a red tie retires from performance and agrees to be just what it is. A strip of silk that learned the value of being folded neatly away.